Thank you, Prajwal. Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avataravarishthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha Sudhismritipurananam alayam karunalayam namami bhagavad-padam shankaram lokashankaram. So, this Mahavakya discussion continues. We have to remember these 4 Mahavakyas called great statements in the 4 Vedas, found in 4 Upanishads, each representing one Vedic tradition. That is Tattwamasi, that's what we are discussing today. Tattwamasi is Upadeshavakya. It is in the form of an instruction. The instruction means, well, Uddalaka, the father, the teacher, instructs his student and his son that the supreme truth, that is the essence of everything that you are trying to realize, it is non-distinct and non-different from yourself. It is you yourself. Tat Tvam Asi. This is the Upadeshavakya. And as I mentioned earlier, when a spiritual seeker is fully qualified, he will immediately understand his meaning, and the meaning, that meaning strikes him in the form of an experience. Aham Brahmasmi, the supreme truth. That's the essence of everything. That is the ultimate cause of everything. That is the supreme reality from which the entire universe emerges, where it exists, and towards which it gets dissolved. That is, that Brahman is I am myself, not the physical body, but the divine truth within. This is the idea. Now, this idea has been repeated 8 times, as I mentioned, in the Chandogya Upanishad, 6th chapter. 8 times repeated, one instruction, then that instruction is repeated 8 times. So there are a number of examples. Each time when it is repeated, it is supported by one example. There are many examples. Example of Negrodhabala, kind of the father asked the son to bring a fruit or a nuts or something, breaks it, and ultimately what you find inside, you reach a point where nothing is found. What you cannot see, but what exists there with the essence of the tree. From the seed, it's broken. Again and again, the outer shell is removed. Again and again, the inquiry is made towards the essence of it. Finally, you reach a point, there is nothing left. Well, that point where nothing is visible, it is that seed which actually is the source of the plant, the tree, everything. So like that, this continues the example of tree. Now I'm going to take 2 or 3 analogies to just to give an example of this. One analogy is called is Shakuni Drishtanta. Shakuni is the name of a bird. It's a very, very wonderful example. The analogy is about a bird that is fastened, that is tied to a string, and the string is held in the hands of a bird catcher. And this bird, you have to remember, a bird with a long string attached to it, and the string is being held in the hands of a bird catcher, and the bird moves away. He flies all around. Finally, it has to come back to its own source. That is the place where it is held in the hands of a bird catcher. It cannot go 1 inch farther than the radius that will be the equivalent to the length of that particular string. Now, I shall read this. It's very interesting. Then I shall explain. Yatha Sayatha Shagunihi Sutrena Prabadho Disham Disham Paditva Anyatram Ayatanam Alabdva Bandhanameva Upasayate Evameva Khalu Soumya Tanmano Disham Disham Paditva Anyatra Ayatanam Alabdva Pranameva Upasayate Pranabandhanam Hi Soumya Mana. Actually, you can find this kind of repetition. Pranabandhanam Hi Soumya Mana. Now, the bird has to come back to where it started from. Now, Vedanta tells a human being, it goes through these triple levels of consciousness: the waking state, dream state, and deep sleep state. It goes through all sorts of experiences during waking state, painful and also enjoyable experiences, happy and unhappy experiences. And then during dream, the same mind projects different experiences, mostly a repetition of what the person has gone through during the waking state, because there is a great difference between waking state experiences and dream state experiences. At the same time, there's a great similarity. There's a strong point of similarity also. The difference is that in waking state, you take 6 hours to reach New York. In dream state, it takes split second. Everything is mental. Physical senses of perception and senses of action are not involved. Only mind is involved. So it is subtle. So there is difference with regard to speed, time, place, and so on. The waking state experiences are gross and dream state experiences are subtle. And now all these painful experiences come to an end when you go to deep sleep. Now in Vedanta, there is an interesting point, remember. Deep sleep, in a way, gives you an idea of your real self. Because when you transcend waking and dream experiences, when you transcend pain and pleasure, happiness and unhappiness, good and bad, you transcend all this. And when you reach deep sleep, it's called Sushupti, Jagra, Sopna, Sushupti. Sushupti is a technical word. When you reach the Sushupti state, the deep sleep state, you don't experience anything. But when you come out of the deep sleep, your mind is not blank. You feel, you experience, and you make a statement that you had a wonderful sleep, you had a wonderful rest, a wonderful relaxation. So at the time of deep sleep, you are not aware of this. But after deep sleep, when you come back to waking state, the experience is there, but experiences were also there in deep sleep, but the experiencer did not have the awareness of what he was experiencing in deep sleep, because it had come back to its own real state, which is beyond waking and dreams. So in this manner, every human being, every day, when he goes to deep sleep, he's actually experiencing what it would be like when I transcend duality, when I transcend pain and pleasure. Even if you enjoy something in dream, suppose you have dream, you have a wonderful 18 crores dinner, even that is not a very happy experience compared to the absence of any experience. If a person goes on having dreams, wonderful dreams, he will not get full rest. He will get full rest only when he gets deep sleep. So that's why people go crazy if they are not able to sleep. It doesn't mean that they will go crazy when they are not able to get dreams. when they are not able to get the experience of deep sleep, then only they will go crazy. They become restless. If a patient who goes to a doctor, he doesn't complain, I don't get dreams. He complains, I don't get deep sleep. Because deep sleep, actually, whether you are aware of it or not, it takes you very close to the highest spiritual experience, which is the experience of transcending duality. In dream, you have duality. You and the experience. You are the experiencer, drashta, and there are many things that you experience. So even if you get, as I mentioned, even if you get the finest, most enjoyable dreams, you do not get full sleep. You don't get bliss. You get only enjoyment. Because bliss transcends both pain and pleasure. The experience of bliss is an experience that cannot be really explained. Well, to give an example to a Western audience, let us say, the ultimate approximation that I can make is the experience of a mystic who experiences the presence of the divine naturally, effortlessly, not while attending a mechanical sermon or prayer. You go on shouting hallelujah or something, you don't get bliss. You certainly get enjoyment, but you get bliss only when you feel the presence of Jesus in your depth of your heart. From a mystical, I'm giving an approximation for the benefit of those who belong to Abrahamic faith traditions, because if you read the inner chamber of Saint Teresa of Avila, if you read the autobiographical writings of Saint Teresa, inner castle, going down, going inward and inward, inner castle, where you transcend all barriers, more like from Annamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha, roughly approximation. So also when you really make a prayer, there's one point where your prayer becomes silent. It transcends words. That's the ultimate of prayer. A prayer that doesn't take a man to meditation is not real prayer, because the purpose of every verbal prayer is to go beyond the verbal dimension of prayer to reach the experience dimension. And the experience can only be explained in silence. Similarly, the blissful experience that a person gets during deep sleep, it takes you closest to what we call samadhi. It is not samadhi, but it is different from samadhi, but it can, in a way, give you an idea of what samadhi means. In samadhi, a spiritual seeker, by practicing spiritual disciplines for a very long time, maybe for several life cycles, he reaches this experience with full awareness. In deep sleep, every day, a person reaches this experience without being aware of it. Because what is the proof? In deep sleep, you feel total restfulness. Why? Because the bird has got back to where it belongs. Sri Ramakrishna's gospel, the same kind of analogy is made a much more graphic style. A ship that moved far away from the shore reached the mid-ocean. There's a bird there. The bird, it was resting on one of the decks of the ship. It left the ship. It went round. It went in the northern direction, southern direction, eastern, western directions. It did not find any place to rest on. There's nothing, because no land anywhere. Finally, the bird has to come back to the same ship. It comes back to the same place where it was resting before it started flying around. Similarly, every human being, every day, during waking state and dream state, he goes through all this pain and pleasure, good and bad. But even good experiences will not make you happy. That's an interesting thing. See, suppose you're the richest person, everything going on fine, still you will not be happy. As you evolve spiritually, the more you will be convinced of the emptiness of the so-called happy experiences. That's actually a measure of one's spiritual evolution. Buddha was a classic example. There cannot be a better example. A man who was deliberately kept away from the darker darker side of human life, one day happened to see something. Because he felt a kind of restlessness. He wanted to come out into the streets. So his charioteer took him. He felt like a prisoner, living in the palace, healthy, strong, young, all people, all admirers around, plenty of money, eating luxurious food every day. But that did not make him, well, that did not give him bliss. It may have given him enjoyment, but enjoyment can make you tired of enjoyment. When a person evolves in spiritual life, he becomes more and more fatigued, tired of seeing and experiencing the so-called happy experiences. That's a point where a person's spiritual life actually begins. So this is an interesting example. So this bird, that's why anyatra ayatanam aladhva, it doesn't get shelter anywhere except the place where it was sitting before it left left the place. I mean, left the bird catcher's hand, or in the context of Sri Ramakrishna's example, before the bird left the ship, it was resting on the deck, on one of the ship's decks. Then he went round, flew in all directions, did not find any shelter. It comes back. So this is an interesting thing. So that then it says Pranabandhanam ki Swami Manaha. Here we have to remember this. The bird has to come back to its own place. Finally, it returns to the only refuge at the place where it is fastened. Like that, every soul has to get back to Atman. When it is done deliberately, consciously, with full awareness as a part of spiritual discipline, then it becomes real. But when it happens every day, automatically, without any effort, it doesn't really benefit us spiritually, but it benefits us because without sushupti, without deep sleep, no one can live in this world, because our mind and senses get fully rested only in deep sleep. Similarly, our whole human life cycles come to a natural, blissful termination only in samadhi. This idea behind. In fact, there are quite a few such examples are there, which I can mention. And also in the 6th chapter, for example, is a Madhukrut Drishtanta. This is another from another angle. Madhukrut in honeybees. Madhukrut means honeybees. So what is Madhukrut Drishtanta? It says, for example, Yadha Somya Madhu Madhukruto Nististhandi Nanatyanam Rukshanam Rasans Samavahara Edam Rasam Gamayanti Te Yatha Yatra Navivegam Labande Amushyaham Vrikshasya Rasaha Amushyaham Vrikshasya Rasaha Asmiti Evameva Khalu Somya Ima Sarva Praja Sadi Sambadhya Naviduhu Sadi Sambadhya Mahidi. So again the idea. Give an example. Honeybees, they collect flowers, they collect honey from different flowers, different plants, different flower gardens. It travels in all directions and collects honey from various kinds of flowers. And then all these different kinds of different varieties of honey are being brought, and they all become honey, because when they have got it is called honeycomb, then they all mixed together. Now, when they become what we call honey, if you buy from market the fresh honey, that honey must have come from so many different sources. Honeybees must have brought it from different sources. Each drop of the honey will not declare, I'm coming from that plant, I'm coming from that garden, I'm coming from that flower. No. That's what the Upanishad says, Te yatha tatra na vivekam labhante. They don't have this awareness, this discriminative faculty. I'm coming from that plant, that garden, that flower, that distinct identity is totally lost. They all become one with one honey. Similarly, all human beings, here in the Upanishad, not only human beings, even animals are mentioned here. So, in another mantra, it says, Vrikshova, Mashagova, Vyagrova, like that. Whether you are a tiger, you are a mosquito, or an insect, you are a lion, you are a deer, whatever animal, they all go to sleep. They are all, look, we don't know whether, but actually they don't get dreams. That's their view. I had the opportunity to discuss these matters with veterinary doctors. They say animals don't have dreams because they don't have the memory system. They have instinct, which is an automatic memory, but not full awareness. So they don't have dreams. Because dream is possible only when you are able to retain in your mind the memories and experiences from waking state, and a similar experience is projected at the mental level. Similar, not identical, but similar, because no one can have a dream without some connection to waking state experiences. No dream experience can be totally detached from waking state experiences. At the same time, no dream can be exact repetition of, it's a duplication of waking state experiences. So animals cannot retain in their system memories, but even memories are retained only in the form of instinct. The instinct is not interrelated. So anyway, so actually the Upanishad discusses that problem also at some point. But I don't have time to go through. So we are concerned with one important Tattwamasi. It's the most important of the Mahavakyas. I mean, Tattwamasi and Aham Brahmasmi. So we'll discuss in detail. So it says, Te yathanna vivekam labhante amushyaham vrikshasya rasaha. I am the honey, the little different varieties of honey. They don't come and declare that identity. I'm coming from that tree. I'm coming from that flower plant. I'm coming from that garden. No, those differences are completely gone. They all become one single honey. Similarly, all living beings get completely unified in that one experience of deep sleep. When this happens, without awareness, without our being aware of it, it doesn't translate into spiritual wisdom. When this happens as a result of gradual and deliberate evolution, you become a saint, a sage. So Vivekananda says in different contexts, any fool can go into samadhi and come back without any change. Fools, of course, don't go into samadhi. The idea is that kind of samadhi is only deep sleep. This idea, that's the idea. He was using a very rhetoric style. So the point is, I can explain this in the light of another example. Let us say, suppose you want to go to New York to get a work done, to to get some business done. In waking state, you buy a ticket, go to the airport, 6 hours flight, you go back, do the business, you come back. Well, that is like just like an experience happening in waking state, in Jagrat state. But suppose somebody puts you in a box, takes you to New York, puts you at the airport, brings you back. It is as good as not going to New York. It doesn't have any effect. You traveled in a box, you came back in a box, or without being aware of it. You're blindfolded. It doesn't work. When you deliberately do something with full awareness, then it has an effect on your life. Similarly, when an individual practices sadhana satushtaya, nitya nitya vastu vega, ihamutra bhalabhoga viraga, samadhi sarka sambati mumukshutum, a sense of what is absolutely real, what is absolutely unreal, then holding fast to what is real, and then a sense of self-control, self-restraint, sense control, all this, plus a strong urge for liberation. Then feeding our mind with good spiritual food through Sravanam, going deeper into what you study, what you read through Mananam, and then Nididhyasanam. If a person deliberately practices these 7 disciplines, it's just like with full awareness, go and buy a ticket, go to the place, finish your job, finish your business, and coming back. It is just like getting real experience that leads to samadhi. This idea behind. That's why in another context, the Upanishad tells you that it just just like animals, Vyagrova, Mashagova, all these different animals also go into this experience, but they come back, it doesn't make any impact on them. This is the idea behind it. Now, we should remember very well what we are discussing. We are discussing the well-known Tattwamasi Mahavakya. Now, I can give you its importance, its spiritual significance. I can explain this in the light of the opposite interpretation by Dvaita tradition, Madhva Siddhanta. The Mahavakya, we should remember, Saya Esha Anima Aidadatmyamidam Sarvam Tat Satyam Sa Atma Tattwamasi Shvetaketu. This is the Mahavakya. But it means the great teacher Uddalaka is telling Shvetaketu, this supreme truth that's that you are inquiring into, that is you yourself and nobody else. This is the instruction that is given. And again, it is repeated again, that subtle principle, Esha Anima, Aidudatmyamidam Sarvam. And that which is the subtle principle, all that is world as that as a self, means the self of the entire existence is that Atman, the self, the essence, the truth of this world, and everything else is that Atman, this subtle principle. That is the ultimate truth. That is the self. Then Tattwamasi, that thou art, that you are. This is the Mahavakya. Tattwamasi, that you are. Oh Shvetaketu. Shvetaketu, this subtle principle, this ultimate truth, which is the essence of everything, which and again, all these that you find around, the entire existence as this Atman, as its self, as its essence. And that's the only truth. And that is you yourself. This is the Mahavakya. Tat Tvam Asi. This is Mahavakya. Now, it may be very interesting for those who are interested in grammar, this is the Advaita interpretation. Now, this Advaitic interpretation, non-dualistic interpretation, when looked from another angle, it's almost comical. There was the greatest dialectician in Madhva tradition was Vyasatirtha. One of the greatest dialecticians India has ever seen during post-Shankarite times. And this magnum opus was Nyayamrutam, which actually incidentally led to the emergence of another great classical magnum opus of Madhusudana Saraswati, known as Advaita Siddhi. The different definitions of Mithyatum, all these are included. I'm not going to those details. You can ask the question during interaction if you are interested. Now, Vyasatirtha, in his Nyayamrutam, which is actually a refutation of Advaita, it is meant to refute non-dualism Advaita. He says this should be read as Atattwamasi. Why? Of course, Vyasatirtha's statement is Adya Khande Swadandra Shanka Anaspada Sushupti Nidarsanena Chadurthecha Anyavidirego Kya Ashtamecha Swadandra Shanka Anaspada Marana Nidarsanena Cha Ishwaradhinatwasya Uktatvat Atat Ityeva Chedo Yuktaha. It's a complicated Sanskrit. Vyamrita is one of the most difficult books in India's Vedantic dialectical literature. But if you can try to read a translation, it will be an exciting intellectual adventure. Even English translation also will be great adventure. And of course, its refutation by Madhusudana Saraswati, who refuted Nyayamrutam. And that well-known book is Advaita Siddhi, which I discussed on many platforms, many sessions previously. Sessions on Advaita Academy, I have given many sessions on the subject. Anyway, sir, what it says is, so you can look at this word. You can see Sa Atma Tattwamasi. So this remember Sa Atma Tattwamasi in Sanskrit. Sa Atma Tattwamasi. Now, Vyasatirtha says there is a akara, so which is somehow dropped, so it should be understood that there was an akara before ta, tattwamasi. Before ta, there was an akara. Atattwamasi. Akara is dropped. So, and this doesn't involve any violation of grammatical rules, according to. Another important well-known writer in Madhva tradition, his name is Gauda Purnananda Chakravarti. So he says, explaining or justifying Vyasatirtha's statement, Adat ityeva chedo yuktaha, means you should pronounce this as Atma Atattwamasi. So there is a another A. Somehow that A was gone. So it should be implied, it should be assumed that there is an akara. Akara means A, the vowel. Because if you add A before a consonant, it becomes opposite. Tattvam atattvam. That's the idea behind it. Satyam asatyam. Satyam means truth. Asatyam means falsehood. The opposite of truth. So this gentleman, it is Gauda Purnananda Chakravarti, he says the real meaning is not Tattwamasi. The real meaning is actually Tasya Tum Asi. That's the real meaning. Tasya means his. You are God's servant. That's the meaning. Instead of saying the supreme truth, that you are inquiring, it is your own inner self, you should interpret this whole statement as the supreme truth, and you are the servant of the supreme truth. So he says the sixth case, that means Shashti Vibhakti, Tasya. Instead of Tat, you should read it Tasya, Tvamasi. Means Tvam, you, Asi means Tasya means his, he capital letter. That means we can say the strong, muscular, uncompromising, monotheistic God who won't brook any nonsense and who won't take no for an answer, who will use his stick the moment you make a mistake. That is the God Upanishad is talking about, not the supreme divine principle that is all pervading. This is the dualistic, the Madhvacharya's interpretation. That's why you see, this is the Gauda Purananda Chakravarti says, in his view, actually there is what we call a dropping. You may call it illusion. It means you should assume there was a and it is somehow implied but not mentioned. So it means instead of Tattwamasi, it is Tasya Tum Asi. Means his, you are. Instead of that supreme, that you are, you should read his, you are. Means you are God's servant. That should be the interpretation according to the dualistic system. It's a very interesting. Remember, the glory of those times were that they were all intellectually debating and discussing. One pulling in one direction, the other pulling the opposite direction of dualism, from Advaita to Dvaita. So this is just to give an example. I mean, the idea, now no question arises. If the implication was Tasyatumasi, his, you are, then there was no need for Swetaketu to request his father, please repeat again. Swetaketu goes on repeating every now and then, he repeats. Swetaketu is asking his father to repeat this again. See, Bhuya eva ma bhagavan vijñāpayatu iti. Every time from 9th Khanda onwards, whenever Uddalaka gave this instruction, Tattwamasi, Swetaketu says, I don't understand. Please repeat me. Please repeat this again, once more. Swetaketu was not hard of hearing because he didn't understand. Naturally, he did not understand. The one I'm meditating on, it is I myself. You go crazy if you imagine that your body is the God whom you are praying to. Totally crazy. But what Uddalaka wanted to make clear was the supreme truth, the divine principle that is all pervading, that is immanent, that is all transcendental. That divine truth is in fact your own inner being. You turn your inquiry inward, you transcend your identity with the body-mind complex, then you find that divine truth is the all-pervading divine principle. This was the real implication. Swetaketu did not immediately understand. So he went on repeating, Bhuya eva ma bhagavan vijñāpayatu. Please teach me again. Please repeat this again. And every time Uddalaka reinforced each repetition with one or other new illustration. Finally, on the 16th Khanda, Swetaketu says, all right, now you understand. I am not this body-mind complex. I am that all-pervading divine principle. Not as Swetaketu the son, Uddalaka's son, but Swetaketu the Kudastha, the Chaitanya that is present within. That is non-distinct, non-different from Atman, Paramatman, Brahman, idea behind. So you can imagine to what extent this interesting debates go. It's a very, very, very good illustration which I wanted to explain. Now there is a still more, a little bit of entertainment will not be without its relevance in a discussion like this, you know. One of the most entertaining and one of the most instructive discussion on this, of course, there were many debates, Vakyarthas, you know, Shankaracharya himself had a heated debate with Mandana. Mandana was an aged man, an householder, and he was an exponent of one school of Veda, which actually believed that the whole purpose of Vedic literature, Vedic tradition, was to go on performing yajnas, yagas, different rituals. That was the real purpose of Vedic literature. This was the view of this Purvamimamsaka. Jaimini was the exponent. Mandana was a great exponent of this system of philosophy, follower of Jaimini. So Shankaracharya wrote, Mandana's guru, Kumarila Bhatta, and taught him the supreme Advaita. By the time Kumarila was about to, his life was coming to an end. So before he breathed his last, before he died, he requested Shankaracharya, please go and teach and defeat my own disciple, who is a cutthroat Mimamsaka. You should convince him about Vedanta. Shankaracharya, as a little boy, he appears in front of Mandana, who was actually performing some Vedic ritual meant for householders. So Mandana begins his discussion. This is a long discussion, the beginning, which I'm not going to go into details. Actually, Mandana tried to make fun of Shankaracharya, you know, you shaven-headed fellow, where are you coming from? Kuto Mundi. So it actually means, where is the shaven head coming from? So Shankaracharya twisted the meaning, says that you don't know, the shaven head is coming from the neck. Like that, there's a long discussion going on. Afterwards, Mandana settled down. He became calm and quiet with the intervention of Jaimini, Vyasa, the great ancient sages who appeared before him because of his devotion. Then there's a long discussion. In that discussion, Mandana makes a point. You see, your Brahman is, after all, your Brahman is all pervading. And Aham Brahmasmi, I am the Brahman. And Brahman, this Brahma Sakshatkara, spiritual enlightenment, is not the result of any action, because any action of ritual, if it produces any spiritual emancipation or any result, any spiritual result, that result will be impermanent, because it is the effect of an action. So anything that is the result of an action cannot be permanent. Whatever is your true nature, which you are born with, that alone can be your true nature, your permanent nature. Suppose you buy a car, it's a result of hard work, and you buy a car. So the car will not be permanent, because something that you buy can be sold tomorrow, you may buy another car. But you are born with something that is not, that is something that you don't get, that is your natural identity. So Aham Brahmasmi. And Vedanta tells you mokshasya karyatva, the liberation is not the result of any action or rituals or anything. It's not the effect of anything. It is your own true nature. All spiritual disciplines, including the 7 disciplines that I mentioned just now, Nitya, Nitya, Vastu, Vega, etc., they are meant to help you to remove the wrong notion that you have got, that you are not Brahman. See, the purpose of bringing light to that semi-dark room, where you mistake there is a snake lying on the floor, what is the purpose of light? The purpose of light is not to produce rope. The purpose of light is, the bringing light is, to remove the wrong notion that you have got in your head that it is a snake. You have got a wrong notion, you mistake the rope for a snake, and when you bring light, that wrong notion is gone. The fact it is a rope It's a natural state. It is not a result of any action. You may go and bring a torch. Bringing the torch all involves different rituals, performances. And those performances will produce the result. That's the way, that is the Mimamsaka view. Shankaracharya says, no, it is our own true nature. Swadasiddha, Pratyaksha Siddha, our own true nature. So Mandana is giving an argument. He is trying to bring forward an argument. This Brahman, it is your true nature. Then why should you read Vedanta books, scriptures, meditation, puja? Why should you do that? You have Brahman already, nothing to do then. Go and sleep. Aham Brahmasmi, Sarvam Khalidam Brahman. These are Vedantic statements. Everything is Brahman. I am the Brahman. All right, then problem solved. Then why these Upanishad statements? They're totally meaningless. So Vedanta or Upanishads are not pramanas. They are not they are not epistemological tools for teaching anything. I mean, this is your true nature. So, and again, even if you disown it, you cannot disown it. It's your true nature. And in that case, why should you practice all these spiritual disciplines? Why should you study Upanishads, Vedanta? No need. The answer is, it is true we are Brahman, but right now it's only an intellectual idea. Even if you're convinced Advaitin, still only the intellectual concept. It should become a real experience, inner experience. For that, you need to go through all these disciplines. So there is an interesting verse there. It comes in Shankara Digvijaya, written by Vidyaranya, who wrote this well-known life of Shankaracharya. There are many lives of Shankaracharya, 6 or 7, and this was a commentary on this was written by Dhanavadi Suri. But anyway, this is a well-known, maybe the most celebrated of the biographies of Shankaracharya written in Sanskrit verse. Bho yadikshma dhivate bhavadbhir deveshayor vastavam aikirubam Vishuddham angikuriyadehi tatra pramanam evam na vayam pratimah. Well, you know, see, this Jiveshwara Aikyam is okay. It is well known, it's so obvious. So why should you consider Upanishads as a testimony, as an epistemological tool? Why should we discuss this? It's a very interesting. So the answer, Shankaracharya's answer is this, this is a pramana, because this highest truth was taught by great teachers like Uttalaga to Swetaketu. Therefore, this is the highest spiritual experience that Swetaketu reached slowly. He did not arrive at this experience at the beginning. He only heard it. Then from 8th Khanda to 16th Khanda, in 9 Khandas, 9 sections, this discussion continues. Only to the end of the 16th section, Swetaketu reached the experience level of what he heard earlier. This idea behind. Now, again, there is another interesting. I am giving an example of how these Mahavakyas were being discussed among scholars. Mahavakya Tattwamasi, it doesn't involve an injunction. It doesn't ask you to do anything. In Vedantic scriptures, you find Surga Kamo Yajeda. If you want to go to heaven, you should practice, you should perform all these Vedic rituals and so on. Yava Jivam Juhaya. I mean, you should practice these rituals as long as you live. Many such statements are Vedic literature. You do this. If you want this, you do this. Like that. They call it Vidhi Vakya. All kinds of vidhis are there. Certain vidhis are meant to help you to attain something after death, like Swarga Prapti, going to heaven. Certain rituals are automatically to be performed. If you perform them, you don't get any special result. But if you do not perform them, then the sin of non-performance will be on you. So you have to do something as a compensation as a penance for not having performed that ritual. Like that, there are many injunction, statements of injunction. Vithi Vakyani is called this. Now Mandana puts forward another argument. He says, in that case, this Tattwamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, all these great Vedantic statements, since they don't specifically mention something, they may be taken to be some kind of an auxiliary statement of a bigger statement or injunction. We call it Vidishesha. Apada Tattwamasi Vakya Yatisha Jive Srayor Abheda Pratiyate Athapi Makhadi Karta Prashamsaya Syat Vidishesha Eva. What it means, Vidishesha means Jiva Brahmaikyam, the Kudastha Jiva and Brahman Atman are the same. This is the essence of Tattwamasi. So, and doesn't mention any special ritual that you have to perform. In that case, okay, it can be considered to be an auxiliary or secondary portion of another injunction. If you do this, you perform these rituals, and then this will be the result. Or it may be just as just a statement of result. If you perform certain rituals, you get this experience, and the experience, according to Mimamsaka school, it means you get special favor from some deities whom you try to please by performing these rituals. Shankaracharya says, no, it cannot be. It cannot be just a statement of a statement given as in the form of a result of performing certain rituals, because the statement doesn't include any injunction, kurvida, like that, like that. None of these injunctions are mentioned here. It is stated to be an experience that's not related to any action of performance of rituals. It's a natural state of spiritual evolution, spiritual awareness that comes to a person when he's endured with all these spiritual qualities, like a sense of total renunciation of empirical worldly things, upholding the absolute truth, absolute reality, disregarding what is relative, and also as a result of developing qualities like self-restraint, self-control, contentment, concentration, and also as a result of a strong urge for liberation. Nitya nitya vastu vega ihamutra bhalavag viraga samadeshaka sambati mumukshutum. And also through a lot of spiritual disciplines that you have to perform by reading, listening to higher spiritual instructions, and reading scriptures, and feeding your mind with spiritual food, and then through deep meditation, concentration, the meaning of what you read, and also by meditation at a higher level, you internalize what you learn. This is the only way for us to transcend the realm of rituals and mechanical practices, and eventually to realize within ourselves that the supreme truth that we are seeking to realize is actually non-different from ourselves, but not in this physical dimension, not in the sense of this embodied being, but rather the supreme divine principle that is the indweller, that is the inner essence of all of us. So this is how the discussion continues. I have given just a sample of some aspects of this great statement of Mahavakya. You are most welcome to ask questions. Interesting. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Ranjit, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, Namaste, Swamiji.
Yeah.
So my question is about, so is there a book, for example, which word-to-word translation of this Mandana Mishra Shankara discussions? What is a good book to read on that?
Yeah, if you want, I think there is of course, In Kerala, the Kerala University must have brought, I heard, a translation of Shankara Vijayam, one of the of Vidyaranya, that is a well-known book, and Swami Tapasyananda has translated that book in English. So these are different sources. Swami Tapasyananda's translation published in Madras. Of course, Shankara Vijaya is a well-known. It has some commentaries by some scholars like Dhanapati Suri. There's also written sub-commentary on Buddhartha Deepika of the Suri. So, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Maharaj, before we get to David's question, I'm going to ask about the timeline of that. These debates that we're speaking of between the Dvaitins and the Advaitins, Madhusudana Saraswati, these were happening in the 1600s and 1700s.
Yeah, no, earlier.
Earlier, okay.
Time Vyasatirtha's time is around 15th century.
15th, okay.
15th, 16th century, that's it. Yeah, because from 15th to 16th century, during the interval. Mr. Born in 1465 around our time, and passed away in 1500 around that time. So let's say for 15 to 16th century.
So in the West, you know,
came later, who wrote a refutation of Vyasatirtha's Nyayamrita. Came later, 16th century. Yeah.
Okay. The anything analogous to what was going on in the West, the emergence from medieval times into Renaissance and later Age of Enlightenment. Of course, this happened before the Age of Enlightenment, you know, now that you've clarified it.
Yeah, you know, from 16th century onwards, these kinds of discourses were taking place at two levels. Some great scholars will write a book, and that becomes popular among scholars again, and some other scholars from the other philosophical tradition will write a refutation of this book. This went on like that. From 17th century onwards, this intellectual dialectical warfare came to an end, more or less. And right now there are discussions going on, but not this sort of theological dialectical warfare, writing elaborate books. This Nyayamrita is an absolutely astounding work for the scholarship and also the dialectical skill, next only to Shankaracharya. Vyasatirtha was an astounding dialectician, and he was fully matched by Madhusudana, who wrote what may be called the most important dialectical philosophical work belonging to post-Shankarite time. It's called Advaita Siddhi, which is one of the, can be called something like the critique of pure reason of Vedantic tradition, Advaitic tradition. Yeah. This kind of hair-splitting argument making use of, let us say, actually, in fact, I mentioned this just now. I think I mentioned this Vyasatirtha's quibbling, you know, this very sort of thing, you know. He says, Ityeva chedo atat ityeva chedo yuktaha, means you should split this, means not tat but atat. But actually there is, but you know, Atma is when you write this called, it can be called, you know, this can be maybe some kind of a Savarna Dirgha Santhi. So the Dirgha means Savarna Dirgha, that means it can be lengthened. The Akara can be lengthened. And it is not a violation of grammatical rule. It will be fully permitted. But obviously, it's an attempt to use your language skill to teach the real meaning or implication of the statement. But then this was considered to be some kind of a a sign of one scholarship, that's the idea behind. So it's called, according to Vyasatirtha, rather according to the other great Dvaita scholar, his name was the Gauda Purnananda Chakravarti, Tattwamayananda, wrote a famous book, Tattwamayananda. So according to him, it's just a case of Savarna Dirgha Sandhi. So you mean if you add one more it becomes long vowel, Savarna Dirgha, same Sandhi, same Akara becomes longer. So then there is no grammatical the problem there. It can be interpreted in that way, but obviously it is wrong because Shvetaketu was a man who had studied Vedas for 12 years. And is asking, please, Bhuye eva ma bhagavad vijñapayatu. Please repeat once more. Shvetaketu was a great scholar himself. He did not understand it. So, and then Uddalaga had to go on repeating with a fresh illustration with each repetition. Then finally, to the end of the 16th chapter only, to the end of the 16th Khanda only, Shvetaketu actually understood the true implication of it. So just for a minute, I can tell you. So, Shvetaketu says at the end, Tasmad Vigaranukudadi, like that. If there's a long statement that to the end of it, Shvetaketu statement, which so na acharyavan gurusho veda tasya tavadeva chidam ityupadeshatva. In the discussion it comes, because once you get this realization, you may continue living, but then when at the time of giving up this body, you will naturally reach the highest spiritual liberation, moksha. That's the idea behind. So even after getting instruction, after all the spiritual disciplines, one gets fully established in that conviction will have its effect, because the moment a person feels that this body that you cared for so much, after all going away right now, so what else have left for me? At that time, this realization will come. Well, I am something much bigger than this body. I'm not going to lose anything by giving away, by losing this body. So that's why Videka Mukti comes. Means liberation.
Ranjit, do you have a follow-up? Your hand went back up.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying that since you're discussing, so I had this, so this 15th century versus 14th century. So before that, you had talked about Vajaspati Mishra, etc., who are in 10th century, much earlier than this. So the discussion continued right from Shankara, kind of continuously,
Vajaspati Mishra was a great commentator who wrote Bhamadi Tiga, which actually a commentary on Brahmasutra Bhashya, Shankaracharya Sun Bhashya. He was a great follower of Shankaracharya, Vajaspati. So the timeline you should remember, Vajaspati was more or less a contemporary of Shankaracharya. From Shankaracharya's time, his disciples, especially Padmapada and Sureshwaracharya, wrote outstanding books. Sureshwaracharya wrote Brihadaranya Upanishad Bhashya Vartikam, Taittiriya Bhashya Vartikam, and Vajaspati Mishra wrote Bhamadi Tika, and then Padmapada wrote Panchapatika. So these three great writers, they gave birth to three different schools. One Vajaspati school called Bhamadi Prasthana. Padmapada school later came to be known as Vivarana Prasthana, because another great scholar, Prakash Atmayedi, wrote a commentary on Panchapadika, which became Panchapadika Vivaranam. So, and then Sureshwaracharya's tradition came to be known as Vartika Prasthana, named after Brihadaranya Upanishad Bhashya Vartikam. So the point is, discontinued, and they were fully established. Then in 12th century, Ramanuja and Madhva came. Ramanuja was an elder, was little before Madhvacharya. So Ramanujacharya did not go directly opposite to Advaita. this system is called Visishta Advaita. There's an element of Advaita in it. Also, there's an element of Dvaita in it. But Vyasatirtha was, of course, he was the most prominent scholar who came in the line of Madhvacharya. Madhvacharya was the exponent of Dvaita system. It was diametrically opposite to Advaita. Diametrically opposite to Advaita. Just the polar opposites, so to speak. Even the Chaitanya system and the Scott, they're all actually philosophically they follow the tradition of Madhvacharya system, one way or other. I mean, not exactly, but with some changes. Wherever you find this is the only way, nothing else, there is an element of Madhva tradition there. Wherever you find the concept of oneness and unity, all-inclusiveness, there's an element of Advaita. That's all. This can be stretched in different angles with different degrees of differences.
Thank you. Thank you. David, thanks for your patience. Please proceed.
Yeah, thank you.
Swami, my question is, I'm sure it's a common question, is if because we are ignorant, that means that if it's our true nature, it means we forgot our true nature. What's to make us so we won't forget it again, even after we are illumined?
Yeah, true. Yeah, no, when we actually get back to our true awareness of our true nature, as a concept, it may be lost, but it would still produce some result. If we reach the experience dimension of this concept, this spiritual, this Advaitic truth, then we will never forget it. So in the Shankaracharya's commentary, he says, a king in his court is like a liberated soul. Now, a king, when suppose he's an expert in flute game. So now if he is playing on his own flute or giving a musical performance in his own court, he's not concerned about that. He's not expected to please anyone. But suppose he invites a professional singer, medieval time, that is in ancient times, and the professional singer, if he doesn't perform up to the king's expectation, he may lose his head in ancient times. Now, the difference between a Jivan Mukta, a liberated soul, who have reached the experience level of Advaita Anubhuti, Advaita experience, and others is this. Once you have reached this experience dimension of Advaita Anubhuti, you have realized that you're something other than this body mind complex. It's become an experience. You never lose it. You live in this world, but you'll be doing things as the king is playing on his flute in his own court. You do your best, but you are not attached. You are not worried. Because you are living in this world. The whole world and your life in this world becomes almost like a sport. It's a hobby in modern times. If you have a hobby and if you are very much concerned, you fight with a neighbor because you lost a game, it's not a hobby. If it is hobby or sport, Leela, Logavattu, Leela Kaivalyam. It's one of the Brahma Sutras in Brahma Sutras. Logavattu Leela Kaivalyam. Jivan Mukta, everything is like a Leela. Leela means sport. So it doesn't mean that we become insensitive, we become negligent, we are floating in there, nothing of the kind. It means you do everything most wonderfully well. But if something goes wrong, you are the least concerned. You have developed a kind of non-attachment, which is a natural characteristic of any person who has reached this level of spiritual experience. Just like a small boy, for him, candy is very important. When he becomes an aged person, he won't cry and weep. He doesn't get his candy. So like that, for his liberated soul, he knows that the world is essentially impermanent. Mithya, Jagat Mithyatvam. So for him, nothing. Actually, I tell you, as a spiritual experience, the same happens to a devotee of the highest order. If you read the inner castle of Saint Teresa of Avila, when she reaches a very high level of the total identity, you find she attributes everything to God or Jesus. And let us say I'm talking in general way, some higher divine principle. In place of Brahman and Atman, God is the place. God is the place. So when you do total surrender, then also you reach a point where you can look at your own empirical world and everything with a sense of detachment. Everything is the will of God or whatever it is. There also, when you say it's all will of God, it's only another expression of this idea of detachment or non-attachment. That's the idea behind. Similarly, when you know this world, everything is impermanent, mithya, then also you feel the same feeling of non-attachment. The same highest devotion, at the most highest mystical level, the highest Advaita experience are the same, only at the experience level, not elsewhere. This, you know who said this? Shankaracharya himself says. The same Acharya who wrote all these great Advaitic works, he is the one who made the statement, the highest experience of Advaita and the highest practice of devotion are the same, again, at the highest level. Maicha ananya yogena bhaktihi abhibicharini vivikta desha sevittum anabhirjana samsadi. It comes to the 13th chapter, 10th or 11th verse. There are some different versions. 13th chapter, 10th or 11th verse. The verse is Maicha ananya yogena bhakti abhibicharini. Abhibicharini bhakti means the highest, most sublime devotion, unwavering. Shankaracharya himself writes, Suddha, Nirmala, Vibhijarana Sila, Vibhijarani, Sachajnana. He says that unwavering, pure, ultimate, sublime devotion, that is the highest knowledge also. Knowledge means Advaita Anubhuti.
In what book, Swami? In what book is that, Swami?
Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita. The verse, you can, if you go to Swami Tattwamayanandaji's book, it contains in Roman letters. So you can easily, 13th chapter, 11th or 10th verse. There is some difference. Maicha ananya yogena bhaktihi abhijarini. The theme of this verse is the highest sublime, the most sublime, unwavering, pure devotion. And that and Advaita experience are the same. Now, the point is, unfortunately, Ramanujan and Madhvacharya could not, they may not have read Gita Bhashya. The main problem is, in those days, there was a lot of dogmatic, dialectical debates taking place. So they were all great men. All these acharyas were great men. But frequently, dogmatism comes into full play when you come to this, you think that, well, I'm wrong, you're right, still I will hold my own view. It's good dogma. I understand that you are right and I'm wrong, still I hold my own view. So that is called dogma. When dogmatism comes, it doesn't work. As Vivekananda says in modern times, Swami Vivekananda said that we are traveling from Dvaita to Advaita through Visishta Advaita. In fact, Shankaracharya in his own works, in his devotional poetry, elsewhere, he fully accepts devotion in its most sublime level. There is actually no scope for any kind of friction or disagreement in Shankaracharya's Advaita system. This idea behind. Okay, thank you for the question. Yeah.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, David. Mark, you have the next question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark. There you are.
Good evening, Swamiji, Maharaj. In the beginning of your talk this evening, you talked about the different states of consciousness, waking, dream, and deep sleep. And you alluded that we as human beings need to be in that state of deep sleep in order to give the body rest. My question concerns the process of meditation. I've heard that people that are able to meditate deeply, say for an hour, it's equivalent to like 4 hours of normal sleep. Does meditation give us the ability to sleep less?
Yeah, actually, any opportunity to transcend body consciousness will give a tremendous rest to body. These are an important thing. So any experience that involves some kind of transcending body consciousness, it gives tremendous rest to the body. We become tired the closer we are to the body. More and more tired as we identify ourselves with the body much more and more intensely, we become more and more fatigued and tired. The more we can transcend our identity with the body, the more we feel fully rested and restfulness. In sushupti or deep sleep, there is this element of transcending body awareness, body-mind awareness. And that's why we feel sleep. That's why we feel sleep. Happy experiences may not give you sleep, or rest. When we transcend both happy and unhappy, total transcending. When in deep sleep, it happens without our being aware of it. In deep sleep, sushupti. In spiritual ecstasy, the Advaitic ecstasy or devotional ecstasy, this transcending comes as a result of our evolution, which again involves our practice of spiritual discipline. These are important things to remember. What we earn alone can be ours, not what we get in spiritual life. Our participation also is important, not because it produces the result, because it produces this fitness. It helps us to evolve, to be aware of what we are experiencing. It's an important thing to remember. That's why I give this example. Any person who's deeply spiritual, deeply devoted and devotional at the highest level, that person also actually transcends body consciousness. And he's able to practice the same kind of detachment or non-attachment which an Advaiti, with a person with Advaiti experience able to do. It's a will of God, will of Lord, something like that. There also you are detaching yourself. Oh, this is nature of the world. The world is like this. Jagat Mithyatva. Same. Right? The world is Mithya. Oh, so much the world. We can dismiss all this as part of the inevitable nature of this impermanent world, if you're not doing it. Or you can dismiss all this as an inevitable experience that comes as a result of the will of God, something like that. There also you are detaching yourself from it. A bhakta, a devotee can do that. Advaitin also can do that. And this Shankaracharya himself says. So there is no scope for any conflict. People who don't read Shankaracharya's books, they fight with him. Fortunately, they don't know Sanskrit. And they mostly study with the help of mistranslations. It's just like computer science or medicine engineering. This is science only. I can tell you, if somebody gets a degree from a university specializing on Immanuel Kant, he'll be allowed to teach in a university. But the modern computer bloggers will not be permitted to teach in Harvard or Oxford. You need to go to another university at the same time to get a PhD to be able to teach. But the point is, in modern times, any fellow can talk about Advaita. He may introduce himself to be a specialist on engineering and he will start talking on medicine. Suppose an engineer approaches you, come on, Mr. Bark, I am going to perform a surgery on you. You run away from him, you know. For your life, you go away from him. That is what is happening in modern world. And this is happening in India also. And sometimes even those who are supposed to be monks, they also do the same, unfortunately. This is nature of the world. No problem. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yes.
when a doctor, when an engineer comes and tells you, Mr. Mark, I'm going to perform a surgery on you, you run away from him. Like that, people without any proper training in Vedanta, which you receive from another Vedantic teacher, traditional teacher, you listen to him, but you should also give as much value as that person deserves. Not more, not less.
Got it. Thank you.
I can give this discussion will have a fun, wonderful, fitting conclusion. Some years ago, there was an article. If I'm right, it was I'm not sure if it was published in the Global Vedanta, which is it's one of our Vedanta Society's journal. It also has got a lot of humorous, funny articles, a lot of jokes also. So well known for that. One American author was writing, he had written an article, and he was actually making fun of some of the Neo-Vedantics who will tell you, you do this and you get Kundalini. You do this, you can become a yogi. 3 things you do, your Kundalini will reach, or you will you become Advaita, you become liberated. So an American author, I just long ago, he says, not so fast, O enlightened one. This was the title of the article. Not so fast. He was giving some methods for fast evolution. I mean, how to raise your Kundalini. I mean, it's kind of fast food, fast food, something like that. So the American author wrote a very interesting article. In a way, it is very profound and very relevant. Not so fast, or enlightened one, enlightened. That is the title of the article. This is becoming fashion. So Vedanta, if you study from a traditional teacher, you'll have absolutely no doubt about it. And if you don't study from a traditional teacher, then you have no end to your problems. That's all. No end to your problem. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Pranam Maharaj.